Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. Have your say. Subscribe if you're new. Welcome to Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. Marvel Studios took filmmaking into it being about art to being about making money. Now, Warner Brothers saw this, like the kids who go to school and see Billy with the rich mummy and daddy. You know, every day Billy comes into school with the best Nintendo handheld game, and Johnny, who has a working class family, parents who can't afford to buy the best Nintendo handheld game, he's going home going, oh, why can't I have all the good stuff like my mate at school's got? That's what Warner Brothers did. They leveraged themselves from being an art house company to being a company like Marvel Studios chasing the money. And in the end, Warner Brothers didn't get either because they went the wrong way about it. When Warner Brothers brought in Nolan and Snyder and Goya to run DC film, it was because at that point they were an art house studio. But then they saw what the first Iron Man did, and they wanted some of that. Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan, and Goya weren't in on these conversations. They thought they could do whatever they wanted to forward their artistic, creative visions. Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman are not bad movies just because they didn't make Marvel Cinematic Universe money. Although Marvel don't make the money that even they were making in their first two stages, right? In their first two phases of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And there's reasons for that, because at one point, Marvel Studios was an entertainment company. Then it became an extreme political movement via its parent company, Disney. And this is what happened. You know, I was reading a very interesting, intelligent article from Screen Rant the other day, which I saw on my Facebook account. Yeah, Screen Rant and intelligence doesn't go together normally, but it was a very thought-provoking article. They spoke about the failures of DC and the 5 flops in a row going back to Justice League. But it's even worse than that, because, you know, we're now going down this brand new so-called rebooted universe via James Gunn, the DCU. It's not a rebooted universe. It's the same ethics as Justice League. That's why Gunn's Suicide Squad universe, which is part of the DCEU, will also be part of the DCU. Make it make sense. So this is why Snyder, Goya and Nolan were ushered out after BVS. Well, Goya and Nolan were ushered out after the underwhelming box office for Man of Steel. Just because your movie makes money, it doesn't make it a great movie. You know, Hollywood, despite the common myth, wasn't always about making money. When I was growing up, right, 30, 40 years ago, Hollywood weren't just a money-making machine. They had the summer blockbuster, which really all started with Jaws and Star Wars 77 and Superman 78. So they could see there was a place for blockbusters, for them to make lots of money. But then from about January to March, you would have your art house, quiet movies, and in the autumn, they would do the same. And then at Christmas, they would have their more kiddie-friendly Disney-type movies, which would also make money for them. Hollywood had a balance of supporting making money with art house movies with creative integrity, right? Or you would never have had a falling down. Now, if you can't accept that Warner Brothers, prior to the success of Marvel Studios, was an art house company, let's look at their previous DC movies before Marvel Studios got started. So, Superman the movie is literally an art house movie, right? Let's look at Batman 89, an art house movie. Batman Returns, an art house movie. Batman Begins, an art house movie. The Dark Knight, an art house movie. The Dark Knight Rises, an art house movie. Man of Steel, an art house movie. Batman vs. Superman, an art house movie. And they literally gambled all of that, pissed on it, threw it away to chase the money. But even when you're chasing the money, you've got to chase the money the right way. Just because Super Mario Brothers has made a lot of money, it doesn't legitimize it as the best animated movie ever made. It's not even my favourite. I loved it. As a Nintendo and Mario fan, I spoke on here yesterday how grateful I am to Universal and Illuminations. They played it safe so they could make money. And that's okay. But it's not as good as the first Toy Story. It's not as good as the first, what is it called? The one with the woman who could do the ice, right? That one. Let it go. That one. I always forget stuff when I'm doing a video. Anyway. So it's good, but it's not great. Just because it's the most profitable animated movie of all time, it doesn't make it the best. Just because the MCU has made the most money out of any other franchise, it doesn't make it the best franchise. It's not better than the first 3 indie movies. It's not better than the original Star Wars trilogy, right? Just because it made money. But that's what happened, because from the inception of Marvel Studios and the success of Iron Man, all of a sudden, the more money you made, the better your movies were. Now, that was the perception, not just in Hollywood, but the public. General audiences started to talk like this on social media, and they still do. And this is what Warner Brothers leveraged. They saw the success of Marvel Studios via Iron Man 2, the first Avengers, and they said, we want some of that green. We don't want this Snyder and Nolan stuff, this art house stuff that we created by putting them in their positions because we were an art house studio. They leveraged all of that to chase the money. And where are we now? And how did they leverage their art house reputation? By making Justice League. They burnt down their beautiful reputation as an art house studio with Justice League, one of the biggest Frankenstein's monsters in Hollywood, in entertainment history. Not to be woke, not to push some extremist propaganda like most companies are doing today, like Disney, like Lucasfilm, like Marvel Studios. No, they did it to chase the money, and all they did was lose more money because they didn't even chase the money properly. Instead of just burning down the DCEU after BVS and saying, it hasn't worked for us, we want to chase the money. Start again, right? No, they're so lazy and cheap. They wanted to release an Avengers-type Justice League movie without doing the donkey work, without doing the hard work. And this is where we are now. 5 back-to-back failed movies. A Blue Beetle trailer that doesn't look great to me. And them saying shit like Tom Cruise loves the Flash movie. It's the best movie since The Dark Knight. The Flash movie isn't an art house movie. It was put together by the studio. The director literally was pointing a camera and doing his thing, and the studio appointed Christina Hodson to write the script. And that's where that movie is at. It's a pre-packaged studio movie to take DC, the original DCEU, via Walter Hamada to a new timeline. And guess what? That's exactly the course that James Gunn is still going on, because of course nothing has changed. It's not a new universe. The only people you won't see in the new universe you won't see in the new universe from the old universe is Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill. And the Gal Gadot question is still there. We're still asking the question, will Gal Gadot, remain as Wonder Woman in James Gunn's and Peter Safran's DCU? Well, Gal Gadot is a very good girl. She didn't come out and expose Joss Whedon until everybody else came out and exposed Joss Whedon, and there's no question about that. She's a very good studio gal, and she kept her mouth shut. When everyone else, the fans, were exposing WB over the Snyder Cut, when they were saying the Snyder Cut didn't exist when it did. No, it wasn't a finished movie, but they shot the damn thing, and we exposed them, some very clever people, exposed them. So nothing has changed at Warner Brothers Discovery. David Zaslav spoke about when he was coming into the studio how he wanted to take it back to the old Warner Brothers, the studio the Warner Brothers created. You lied. How is putting James Gunn in charge of DC, how is that taking WB back to its origins of the original founders of the company, the Warner Brothers? You lied. How is bringing back Henry Cavill, then sacking him 2 or 3 months later, taking Warner Brothers back to its original place of being an art house studio? No. David Zaslav lied to you. David Zaslav doesn't have a clue how to run a scripted studio. He's already admitted that. Apparently, he's taken a lot of advice. He's been seen having dinner with Christopher Nolan. But has all of this been a facade? What can we expect from James Gunn's Superman Legacy, which clearly will not be an art house movie? Well, it's clear by going back into this connected DC universe and trying to legitimize themselves as Marvel Studios did from Iron Man and the first Avengers movie, they need to please Superman fans and DC fans the way Illuminations and Universal have with the Super Mario movie. Because there's no question, the big money comes from kids and families. And kids and families did not want Man of Steel, did not want Batman versus Superman. I mean, who sits there, right, and thinks that Man of Steel and BVS are going to make the money the studio want? That you think general audiences, that children are going to sit there watching Batman branding people? Again, to qualify my opinion, I'll tell you that I love Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman as movies. Zack Snyder, I repeat, didn't do anything wrong. But my point is, if you want to bring the type of audiences that are going in their droves to see the Super Mario movies, the Super Mario movie, and the people who went to see Iron Man and the first Avengers, if you want that type of audience, and if you want to legitimize yourself as that kind of franchise, you have to make stuff for kids. You have to make family-friendly things. Because why is it now that kids and families are not supporting Disney Pixar animated films? Why didn't they go in their droves to watch Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania? Because they know Disney is an extremist company promoting certain things that these white bread mums and dads, or even dads and dads, or whatever kind of family or parents you have, don't approve of. They have become a politically extremist company, and parents are no longer allowing their kids to see their movies. But Mario was made with the best of intentions. It doesn't push any narratives. All right, Princess Peach doesn't have that many challenges. Everything comes easy to her. You've got to, bend the knee somewhere along the line, and that's okay. But it's an inoffensive, fun movie, and it's got everything a Nintendo and a Super Mario Brothers fan would want. And this is the direction James Gunn must go with Superman Legacy. Is that right? Is that me saying that Man of Steel did the wrong thing? Well, it depends. What type of audience were they going for, for Man of Steel? Well, obviously, Zack Snyder wasn't targeting an audience. He was just making his movie. Nolan and Goyer were just writing their movie. They didn't give a shit about the general audience. The first Batman film from Nolan, Batman Begins, wasn't aimed at an audience. But obviously, when Warner Brothers got him to make that film, they wanted the film to sell toys. When he didn't want a Batmobile, they forced him to create something, so he created the Tumbler. He didn't want a Batmobile because he thought it was too campy. But he found something that wouldn't be campy. So Nolan has never been about attracting the general audience. That's why he brought Snyder to the DCEU, to make visionary, artistic, art house movies, because that's what Christopher Nolan thought the studio was at that time. And As I said earlier, it went from being an art house, huge studio to being something different. And it chased the money, it lost its artistic integrity, and didn't get the money either. So we find ourselves in this situation where we all of a sudden have to make a decision. And David Zaslav has already made this decision because Joker and the Batman franchises were already there before Zaslav came along. And he goes, why should I mess with this? There's money there. Both those movies, the first movies, made money. I'm just going to let these directors get on with it. I'm not even going to interfere. But what I'm going to interfere in is the DCEU, because the DCEU was forged as a business, not as Zack Snyder's and Christopher Nolan's artistic plaything. Because unfortunately, those two lads came into Warner Brothers thinking that it was an art house company. And when they came in to do Man of Steel, it was an art house company. But all of a sudden, Warner Brothers wanted other things. And this is what became problematic. It's not Man of Steel that's the problem. Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman were marketed to the general audience. But the general audience are never going to be attracted to films like that. Now, Man of Steel was more palatable to the general audience than BVS was. There's no way a general audience is going to consistently come in week after week for a month to watch that type of movie. Now, Batman vs. Superman made a lot of money in its opening before people knew what the movie was, because it was sold as a movie for general audiences, for fans who have loved Batman and Superman for 30 or 40 years, and people didn't get the movie they were expecting or wanting. That's not on Zack Snyder. It's not on Chris Terrio, just like Man of Steel didn't do anything wrong to a point. Basically, what Man of Steel and BVS and the Snyder Cut do, it takes these DC characters and it allows the director and the writer to do what they want with these characters and have a vision of their own. The problem is Warner Brothers and the people making these films didn't communicate what each party wanted. Because when they brought Snyder and Nolan in originally, if they had the conversation, if Warner Brothers said, look at what Marvel Studios are doing, that's the type of movie we want. Well, if that's the type of movie you want, why are you bringing in Nolan and Snyder, two auteurs, in the first place? You bring in, I don't know who you bring in. Bring in Joss Whedon from the very beginning. He's had experience working with Marvel Studios. He wrote and directed a great first Avengers movie, if that's what you wanted. Bring him in with Jeff Johns from the very beginning. Leave poor Zack Snyder alone. Leave Christopher Nolan alone. It all started, Man of Steel started because David Goyer told Nolan he had an idea for an alien invasion first contact Superman movie. So Nolan, being mates with Goyer, pushed that idea, and that's how the DCEU started. It wasn't even ever supposed to be the beginning of a franchise, but Warner Brothers saw it as an opportunity. They were thinking, oh, Christopher Nolan and Goyer, the Dark Knight trilogy, this could work. This could bring in the bacon. But the audience today are more intelligent than that, and they can see through what you're attempting to do. Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, if it was marketed to a more palatable, audience with intelligent nuances. I've spoken about the June crowd, that kind of crowd. The crowd who love great cinematography and great storytelling, it would have made solid money for them. But that's not what they wanted. So they should never have brought in Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan in the first place, everyone. And instead of at least starting from scratch after they got rid of Snyder, they took his work and tried to recycle it like your roll of recycled toilet paper. You can tell when toilet paper is recycled, and you could tell exactly what Justice League is. And now they are going about things in the same way with James Gunn and Peter Safran. They're recycling the DC Extended Universe into DC Universe and pretending it's something that's rebooted, it's something new, and this is the thing. Warner Brothers are so far away from their art house reputation. That's what this studio needs to be. That's what that studio needs to go back. But this is what I keep on telling you. Entertainment is never going back. This is where entertainment is now, run by the extreme left and their propaganda merchants. We're never going back to the good old days. Take your physical media, polish it, look after it, treasure it, be thankful for it, right? Because we're never going back to the good old days. It sucks. We're never going back to even the good old days of the MCU when they were actually making somewhat proper movies. It's over. Basically, Hollywood is now a factory, if you like, an entertainment factory, or a factory that disguises itself as an entertainment factory, but is actually, I mean, Hollywood has always been a propaganda machine. But when I was growing up, it was about God bless America and things like that. Now their anti-patriotism and their aesthetics politically are anti-straight white male. You can't have a straight woman and a straight male having a love story. It's all about the LGBTQ, community. It's all about minorities. Basically, instead of having straight white males, the LGBTQ community, minorities standing together in their movies and TV, what they want to do is extinct the straight white male and replace them with minorities and the LGBTQ community. This is what's happening. Look at what's happening at Doctor Who. He's casting member after member of the LGBTQ community. We can see what he's doing. Doctor Who is well and truly dead, but this is not a Doctor Who video. This is a DC video. And the reason I decided to talk about this is to try to explain to people who don't understand why DC has had 5 failed movies in a row. It's had 5 failed movies in a row because they chased the money in the wrong way. Basically, you either make a Super Mario Brothers movie, or, you make Toy Story, the first Toy Story, right? Basically, the first Toy Story wasn't made just to chase money. It was done because it was an artistic, animated movie with a deep story. It may be about living toys, but there's a bigger commentary, a more beautiful commentary in that first movie and in the second movie. But of course, with the second and third movie, they were definitely chasing the money. The industry has changed. It's become very political and it's become chasing the money. But the more political they become, the less money they make. And the less talented people they've got working on their films. We've seen what's happened to Disney Pixar. Their movies are shit. The reason Illuminations are making money and dominating the animated market for 2 years in a row is because they're not going down that direction. But, NBC Universal are very woke as well. But when it comes to making a lot of money, like with Super Mario Brothers, their morality and their politics go out the window. Let's hope, for everyone's sake who loves entertainment and the talented people working at Illuminations, that aesthetic never changes. So nobody really knows what Warner Brothers stands for anymore. Well, we know what it stands for: making money. The problem is they're chasing the money. They've sacrificed their art house reputation, but they're not even making money anymore. So we know that Disney are an extremist political movement now. But what are Warner Brothers? Are they an extremist political movement? Well, little pockets of them are, for sure. Like DC Comics, for example, and HBO Max. But ultimately, what we're seeing here is that they don't stand for anything. They don't know who they are anymore. You've got big boy Zaslav coming in. Oh, I just want to make money, mate. Yeah, I want $3 billion. But you're not making it. What decisions have you made? The reason we got James Gunn instead of Snyder and Nolan running DC is because he's chasing the money. But if you're chasing the money, is James Gunn the right guy to bring in? Well, I guess we'll soon find out. Because if Superman Legacy pleases Superman fans and DC fans the way Super Mario Brothers has done with Nintendo and Mario fans, then he has succeeded. Then he knows exactly what he's doing. But he's spoken about not making empty shells of movies and making proper movies with stories that mean something. But when you're making Superman, as Bryan Singer and Zack Snyder have found out to their detriment, right? You know that people want certain things from Superman, right? Some people want the red trunks. Some people, Snyder fans, are very anti-red trunks because in Man of Steel and BVS and the Snyder Cut, their Superman doesn't have red trunks, right? So it's an interesting thing. What direction will James Gunn and WB go here to make money, to legitimize their DC interconnected universe as a money-making machine? Can they make it into a money-making machine? So basically, they have to appeal to kids and families because the Mario movie has proven they're the most lucrative audiences, as we didn't already know that, right? So you need, basically, it's not about attracting the kids in the marketing. It's about attracting the parents. But when you've got Disney talking about political representation and inclusion and rewriting songs for certain live action Disney fairy tale movies, the parents are going to say, fuck this, I'm not taking you to see that. We'll rent a DVD, we'll watch something on Netflix, fuck them, we're not going to do it. But when it comes to Mario, because the marketing was done right, you've got Chris Pratt and the rest of the cast sitting there being respectful to their customers and audiences. We love the fans. We're not trying to ruin the fans' childhood. We want to remind them of their childhoods, right? And we want to bring, kids today into that a new childhood that they will remember. You see, so parents are in charge. So when parents heard that Superman snaps Zod's neck, parents ain't going to be taking their kids to see Man of Steel. So Man of Steel missed out on that lucrative family audience, and that's why they didn't make any money. And when they tried to take DC to a family audience via Shazam, only $300 million for the first Shazam, even worse for the sequel. It tells you, even when they attempt to chase that audience, they have no idea how to do it. And in fact, more members of the general audience went to see Black Adam than they did either of the Shazam movies, because The Rock can be a very family-friendly guy who makes family-friendly movies, right? But he's not really consistently a big box office draw. The best way to attract families is to make non-offensive, great entertainment like the Super Mario Brothers movies. I keep saying movies like they've made loads. Maybe I've been to the future and I've seen the sequels already. They're really good. But yeah, so Superman Legacy needs to really look at the Super Mario Brothers movie and say, right, they ticked all the boxes, there was the Easter eggs, they told their own story as well. They brought the family, they brought Mario's and Luigi's extended family to not to live action, but to a movie, and they did it very well. And Nintendo were very resistant to actually do that. They didn't actually want to do that. But in the end, Nintendo, Universal and Illuminations sat down together and knew that they had to do that to make it a relatable movie. So what James Gunn has to do is look at everything that people love about Superman, put a few Easter eggs in there, but also tell a brand new great story for his Superman. It has to be inoffensive. It has to be entertaining. It has to be a movie where parents say, you know what, kids, we can go and see this movie because it's not trying to push any Hollywood message. And the number one thing is to legitimize Superman. Now, Gunn has said all the right things. Most of what Gunn said about Superman and the future of DC is dead right. But talk is cheap. And it's about time, James, we see what you're made of. So at this point, I don't trust James Gunn and Peter Safran, but I want them to prove me wrong. That's the point. I'm not always right. I'm not there. I'm not making the movies. I'm not making the decisions. I'm watching from the outside looking in. I'm seeing him responding to Snyder fans very rudely and sarcastically. That isn't warming myself to him. And he may think, well, why do I care if what your opinion is, Mick? You're just one person. I may be one person, but if I'm thinking it, hundreds and thousands of other people, James, are thinking it as well. So this is what he needs to do to legitimize Superman and DC. We will see how it all plays out. This has been Monday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.